Welcome back. Today we're going to go over General Math Test 2 of the 2019-20 series, the last 10 questions. So let's start with 39. This gives us a polynomial, and it's calling it a perfect square trinomial, and it's asking us for the value of c. Now, a perfect square trinomial would be, it's a different type of trinomial than like a standard one, because let's say I had like x minus 3, right? So a perfect square trinomial is when you factor it, it's like squared. So x minus 3, that whole thing is squared, then that's a perfect square trinomial. And that's equal to, when you FOIL it out, it's x minus 3 times x minus 3, which is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now, the speciality of perfect square trinomials, other than the fact that you can just factor it like that, is there's an easy way to find out many things from it. So if you wanted to factor a perfect square trinomial and you knew it was a perfect square trinomial, then what you would do is you take your b value, -6, divide that by 2, -3. And then you stick an x in front of it, x minus 3 to the power of 2. That is going to be equal to that. Cool, right? So then another thing that you can do is, if you like in this example, you don't have c. So if you didn't have your c value and you knew like your b term, you know that it's going to be -3, x minus 3 whole squared. So then if you take -3 and you square it, then you get your c value. -3, the whole thing squared equals 9, and that is correct. So say I did x plus 3 whole squared, right? What can you find out about that? Well, if I folded it out, I'd have x squared plus x plus 9. But say I didn't know this. Then what I could do is I could divide the b term by 2, and I get 3. So x is +3 whole squared equals that. And then I know that when you square 3, you get 9. That's my c term. So in the same way, it's asking us x squared minus 8x plus c. So you divide your b term by 2, and you get -4. Stick an x in front of it, you get x minus 4 whole squared equals this trinomial. Now it's asking to find the c term. So you could either FOIL it out, or because you know that whatever that is, if you square it, you get c, as we saw here and then here. You just square -4. Remember, you're squaring -4, not just +4. And then you get 16 positive as your c value. You can FOIL this out, but you don't need to, because that's your answer. 39 would be B. Now we're going to do the question 40 of test 2 in general math. This is giving us this equation. And so what we can see straight off the bat is that n is only found in one place, and it's found as the exponent to a. So the base a to the power of n is the only place that we're seeing n, and it's asking us for the square root of n. So that means we need to solve for the base a to the power of n. We need to solve for all of that. And to do that, we have to isolate that variable. So you divide 34 and root 6. And here, let me take this problem over. So then I'm going to rewrite it. 17 root 24 a to the power of 16 divided by 34 root 6. And so you can cancel out 17 on the numerator and denominator. 17 times 2 is 34. And then you can divide by root 6, and you're left with 4 inside the radical. So if you were to rewrite this, it would be root 4 a to the 16th over 2. And now you can, all of that is equal to a to the power of n. So you can simplify the radical. You can bring out 2a to the power of 8 because a to the power of 16, you take the square root, that's a to the 8th power, and then the square root of 4 is 2, divided by 2. And you get a to the power of 8 equals a to the power of n, so 8 equals n. But the question is asking us for the square root of n. So what you have to do is you take the square root on both sides. The square root of 8 equals the square root of n, and then square root of 8 is equal to the square root of 4 times 2. And so the 4 you can bring out because it's multiplication. You have 2 square root 2 equals the square root of n. And so that would be answer choice D. Let's get on to question 41 of General Math Test 2. 41 is asking us for the lateral surface area of the rectangular prism that they give. There's the dimensions, 6 centimeters is the height, the depth is 8 centimeters, and the width is 16 centimeters. So the lateral surface area. So there's a thing called surface area, which is just the sum of all of the areas of the faces. Then you have 6 faces in a rectangular prism. But the lateral surface area is going to be everything except for the top and the bottom. So it's going to be all of that, the side, in the back, and then this side. It's going to be everything but where the x's are, which are the top and the bottom. So what this means is we're going to have to ignore the area of the top and the bottom. So we're trying to solve for this area and then the corresponding one in the back. We're trying to solve for this area and then the corresponding one on the other side. So let's do the pink one first, which I'm going to represent using red. If I were to redraw that rectangle, I'd have a base of 8 centimeters and then a height of 6 centimeters. And then this is times 2 because there's 2 of these rectangles that we need to find the area of. Multiply and you get the area of the red one as 48. And then there's a quantity of 2. So then the total area of the 2 red sides is 96 centimeters squared. Now for the blue ones, if I were to redraw this, I'd have 16 centimeters as the base, and then the height is 6 centimeters. Multiply, and you get an area of 96 centimeters squared. Remember, this is this quantity is doubled, so that's going to equal 192 centimeters squared. If we look at this, we see that once we got the blue ones and the red or pink ones, that's all we need because we're looking at the lateral surface area, not the total surface area. And so we just add these two sums, these two area, and then we get 288 centimeters squared. And that would be answer choice A. Let's go to question 42 of General Math Test 2. 42 is asking for the simple interest. Your deposit is $600, and then the rate is 8%, and you're doing it for 3 years. So this is simple interest. The formula for this is principal times rate times time. And that's equal to the interest. Okay? And it's asking for the interest, it's not asking for your total amount after 3 years. So if we were to plug it in, your deposit is 600, that's your principal. you multiply that by your rate, which is 8%. Okay, so 8% is equal to 8 per 100, which is equal to 0.08. So you write your rate in decimal form, 0.08 times time, which is 3 years. And so that's going to be, and so I got, when I multiplied everything, I got $144. That's your interest. Answer choice E. Now let's go on to question 43 of General Math Test 2. 43 is asking for the x-coordinate of the system of linear equations. This is your system. Cool. Now, first thing I see is I see y equals -3/2 x. Now that is really easy and it's really good for us because now we can substitute that in. Because y is equal to -3/2x, that means we can substitute that in to any value of y. And in a system of equations, our goal is to get rid of one of the variables. So we have one variable to solve in one equation, and then we plug that variable back in to solve the other, solve for the other variable. And so in this case, we have 10x plus 16 times, and in the place of y, we're going to keep -3/2 x because this states that y is equal to -3/2 x. -3/2 times x, and that's equal to -7. So that means 10x plus, we're going to have 16 times -3, which is -48/2 times x equals -7. We have 10x plus -24x equals -7. And then if I were to simplify it, you could cancel out the negatives and then divide by 14. You have x equals 1/2. It's asking us to solve for the x coordinate, so that's where we have to stop. Our answer is A. But if they asked you to solve for the y coordinate, or you just wanted to because you had a lot of time, then you'd take this 1/2 and you'd plug it into that bottom equation. So you have y equals -3/2 times 1/2 in the place of x. And so that's going to be equal to -3/4. And so y is equal to -3/4. But just remember to read the question and see what it's asking for. This time it asked for the x coordinate, so we could just stop right there. And that was question 43. Let's talk about question 44 in General Math Test 2. 44 has asking for the positive difference, and it has an absolute value equation. Now, I did an absolute value equation more in depth in test 1, so go check that out. And also, I have playlists set up to where you can just go to the absolute value playlist, and then you'll see a lot of problems from there if you want extra revision. But I'll just go through briefly what an absolute value is. An absolute value function is it takes whatever's inside and it makes it positive. So if I had -2, the absolute value of -2, that's going to be equal to 2. The absolute value of 2 is going to be equal to 2. The absolute value of -3 times 5 is going to be equal to 15. And then the absolute value can be used as pretty much parentheses in PEMDAS. So you have -3 absolute value 23 plus 5. Well, you're going to evaluate the inside first and then times -3 plus 5. Okay? Now this question is asking for the positive difference of the solutions to the equation. So first we need to find solutions to the equation. And so last time in test 1 I talked about how to solve for an absolute value. So I'll just walk through it again. So you have the absolute value of x minus 5 equals 31. And remember, when you have an absolute value and you're trying to solve for something, you make sure the absolute value is isolated. In this case, it is. Absolute value is the only thing on the left-hand side, and everything else is on the right-hand side. So what you can do is you can get rid of the absolute value, and then on the other side, you make everything there plus or minus. So x minus 5 equals plus or minus 31. The reason it's like this is if I had like the absolute value of 2, that's going to be equal to 2, and the absolute value of negative 2 is also equal to 2. So both plus or minus 2 is equal to 2. So you have x minus 5 equals plus or minus 31. You add 5 on both sides. You have x equals 5 plus or minus 31. Those are your two solutions. You have x equals 5 plus 31 and x equals 5 minus 31. It's asking for the positive difference of these. So just subtract and make it positive. So you have 5 plus 31 minus 5 minus 31 in parentheses. So it's 5 plus 31 minus 5. Negative and negative cancel out. So you have plus 31. So the 5 goes away, and you just have 31 plus 31. That's equal to 62. That's positive. That's your answer. That's choice B. Okay, so this one's going to be interesting. Question 45 of General Math, Test 2. The word problem. Nicholas leaves on a train at 8:15 a.m. to his destination, which is 221 miles away. The train's average speed was 65 miles per hour. And this is the question. At what time does Nicholas arrive at his destination? So our answer is going to be a time. You can see in all of these. Immediately, you can rule out C because it says cm. That's not a unit of time. Okay. To solve this, let me erase all of this so you can read the problem better. So let's ignore when he's going to leave, and let's look at the amount of miles his journey will take, and then the average speed. So speed, it's in miles per hour. So it's saying that the train will go 65 miles in 1 hour. That's equal to 65 miles in 6 minutes. I'm converting the minutes just so it's easier not to deal with decimal hours. So because it's a proportion, miles per hour, 65 miles over 60 minutes will be equal to, because it's average speed, 221 miles, which is the distance that the train covers, over an X amount of time in minutes. Fair enough? So then you multiply by X on both sides, and then you divide by that. So you get 221 times 60 divided by 65. You can like simplify and all that, but the answer you're supposed to get when you do this is you get 204 minutes is equal to X. So X, the amount of time it takes to go 221 miles is going to be 204 minutes. Now, we can't just like add 204 to 815. It's kind of hard. So it's best if we divide by 60 to find the full number of hours, and then the remainder minutes we just add on to 815. So if you take 204 and then you divide that by 60, it can go in 3 full times. So 180, if you subtract, you get 24. So 3 hours, 24 minutes. So 3 hours, 24 minutes after he leaves at 8:15, he will arrive at his destination. That means we need to add 8 hours. We need to add 3 hours, 24 minutes to 8:15 a.m. So you have 8:15. We're adding 3 hours, 24 minutes. And that's going to be answer choice D 11:39. It's AM because Nicholas leaves in the AM. And so that is question 45. It was interesting. Question 46 of General Math Test 2. Guess what? We've finally been dealt a triangle problem. So it gives us the angles in a triangle with the ratio as that. It's asking the measure of the largest angle. So one thing I'd like to do before we start is I'd like to identify the largest angle. So in a ratio, because it's like A to B to C, the largest angle is going to be whatever 16 represents in the ratio. So if we identify that, that's good. Now, what do we know about the angles of a triangle? They add up to 180 degrees, right? So this small angle, this middle angle, and then the big angle, the sum of those angles is going to be 180, and they're in that ratio. So what we can do is, we don't know, like if I had a 1:2 ratio, right, of say like pennies, if I had 2 pennies on this side, then that would make this 4 pennies. And how would I solve that? Well, I mean, if I had 1x pennies, and then I had 2x pennies here, and I said 1x is equal to 2, that means x is equal to 2, and then I can plug that in here, and I find that 2x is equal to 4. So if I have 2 pennies on this side, then I have 4 pennies on that side. Might have been better if I used like pennies and quarters, for example. So using that same thing, we can find, we can make it like 9x to 11x to 16x. And by doing this, we're pretty much just restating that if you scale one up, you're going to scale all of them up, right? If you double the ratio, you're going to double 9, 11, and 16. So we know the sum of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So we know the sum of these three is going to be equal to 180. So let's just do that. So we have 9x plus 11x plus 16x equals 180. That would be 36x is equal to 180. Right? And then you can divide by 36, and you get x is equal to 10 over 2. This is like, because 180 is 5 times 36. Right? So x is equal to 5. That's not our answer. It's asking for the measure of the largest angle. We identified that as the one that's represented by 16. So here it's going to be 16x, and we have to plug x back in. 16 times 5, that's 80 degrees. That would be answer choice B, as in boy. And then if you wanted to find the other angles, you just plug it in. So you have a 45, 55, 80 triangle. If you wanted to just make sure that everything's right, you can add them all up, and you get 100 plus 80. That's equal to 180 degrees. That's the correct answer. Question 47 of General Math Test 2. Here we are. It's asking us to factor that. Cool. So I went more in depth about factoring in the Test 1 playlist. So go check that out. Or just look for a playlist that talks about like factoring or like the quadratic equations. So I'm going to factor this by grouping. I find that might work. So I have 6x squared as my a value. I have 35 positive as my c value. I'm trying to find a combination of that gets to my b value. So I'll also solve this the box method for those that like to do that. So the way I solve it, I try to find factors of b. I try to find factors of a times c that add up to b. it's going to be factors of 35 times 6. Factors of 210 that add up to negative 31. So what would those be? Well, 210, that looks like a 30 times 7. But then when you add that up, it's not what we were looking for, right? So what's 30? 30 is 6 times 5. Maybe we can like work with this. So what's 7 times 5? Because these are all factors, right? So when you multiply all the factors, they should equal 30. So 7 times 5, that's 35. Okay. 6 times 35, that doesn't seem to work either. Because this is negative 31, the factors are going to have to like add up, well, subtract to 31, right? Because 210 is positive, it means both like the components are going to be negative. And I go more in depth in this in my test 1 video for the 2019 general math test. So that means a negative something times another negative something has to equal 210, and that negative something plus that negative something, which is essentially subtraction, is equal to 31. So what could those be? Well, I just showed you that 6 times 5 times 7 is equal to 210, right? 6 is 3 times 2. So 3 times 2 times 5 times 7 is equal to 210. So if I play around with it, 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 7 is 21. Of the negative of those and I multiply, that's equal to negative 210, right? Negative 10 and negative 21. Now if I add those, negative 10 plus negative 21, negative 10 minus 21, that is equal to negative 31. So we found our components, they're negative 10 and negative 21. Now in grouping, we just input those. So minus 10x minus 21x. Okay? I think it's best if we group these two and those two. So that's going to be, you can pull out a greatest common factor of 3x, and on the inside you're left with 2x minus 7. With negative 10x and 35, you can pull out a negative 5, and you're left with 2x minus 7. And before I get the answer, let me do factoring by boxing, by the box method. So you have 6x squared, 35. Your middle components are negative 10x and negative 21x, right? So then the same thing pretty much. The greatest common factor of that, that's going to be 3x. And then the greatest common factor across the top row, that's going to be 2x. And then if I just fill out this table, I have negative 5 up there, and then I have negative 7 over here. And then that's pretty much what we get by grouping. We have the 3x and negative 5 using the distributive property. You can group those together. So you have 3x minus 5 times 2x minus 7 as your factors. And that's exactly what it asked us. So we have to make sure we choose the right answer. 2x minus 7, 3x minus 5, that's going to be answer choice E. We're on to question 48 of General Math Test 2. So question 48 has to do with like the exponents, like dividing, multiplying them. So you'll have to know your exponent rules. I stated 5 of them in the test 1 video for general math. Go check that out, or maybe even just check out the exponents playlist. So I'm not going to like go into depth about the rules. I'm just going to apply them here. So we see 8a to the 4th. We see that, and it's asking us to pretty much multiply. We need to simplify first, right? So 8 divided by 4, that's 2. 6 divided by 3, that's also 2, right? You have 8 squared divided by a squared, that's gone. You have b cubed divided by b cubed, that's gone, right? So this whole numerator is gone except for that 2. Over here, you're left with 2. You have b to the negative first power, right? So we're going to have to bring that up. We're flipping it, and it's going to be b to the first power over 1. And over here, you're left with a to the fourth. So then you subtract, right? A to the first power minus a to the fourth power. You have a cubed. Okay? And so if we write it, I'd have 2a cubed b to the first times 2b to the first. All of that, well, I'm left with nothing in the denominator pretty much, right? So now if you multiply that out, you get 4a cubed b squared. That's answer choice C. We applied the exponent rules of when you divide two common bases with exponents. Then we did the negative exponent rule, and we also did the when you multiply two common bases with the exponents, then you add the exponents. And then also we just simplified across the numerator denominator. And so that was question 48. We're on to question 49 of General Math Test 2, 2019-20. So question 49, it's asking for the length of the missing side. You have a triangle, you have side lengths, you have two of them, and you're solving for the missing leg. We know it's a right triangle, we know Pythagorean theorem applies. So if you don't know the Pythagorean theorem, it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared and, well, a and b are going to be the legs of the triangle, of a right triangle, and then c has to be the hypotenuse. So when you square the legs of the triangle and you sum them, you get the square of the hypotenuse. Now, we know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you were to rearrange, well, if I were to write it out, you have a squared plus b squared equals 20 squared. 64 plus b squared equals 400. If you subtract 64, you get, whoa. If you subtract 64, you get 336, I believe. So 336 is equal to b squared. So you take the square root of that. And whenever you take the square root, it's plus or minus. In this case, you want to apply because you can't have a negative length. So it's just going to be positive. But you have b is equal to the square root of 336. Now, if you know your squares, you know this isn't a perfect square. But you know it ends in 36. So you know like 4 is a factor of 336. What else is a factor is another 4. So 16 is a factor of 336. 16 times 21 equals 336. And so because it's multiplication, you can bring out 4. The square root of 16 is 4. And you're left with root 21. B equals 4 root 21. That's going to be answer choice A. We're on question 50 of General Math Test 2. 50 is saying if x is the positive solution of that, then what is the value of 5x minus 2 to the third power? Well, let's just rewrite this. Let's worry about the 5x minus 2 cubed later. So 3 to the negative second power, these are exponent rules. You can look at the playlist or test 1 where I discussed this more in detail. It's going to be 1 over 3, all of that squared, plus 1 over 4, all of that squared, equals 1 over x, all of that squared. And so that's equal to 1/9 plus 1 over 16 equals 1 over x squared. So then you cross multiply, and you get 16 plus 9, 25 in the numerator, over 16 times 9, 144. And that's equal to x squared. Now what you do, no, it's equal to 1 over x squared, sorry. So then you multiply by x squared and you divide by this, so it's essentially you flip the fractions. You have x squared equal to 144 divided by 25. You take the square root. It's normally plus or minus, but it's asking for the positive solution. So that would make it just positive. And so the square root, and then after that you get x equals, the square root of 144 is 12, and the square root of 25 is 5. You get 12 over 5 equals x. That's not your answer, because it's asking for the value of 5x minus 2 cubed. So then you have to plug it. You get 5 times 12 over 5 minus, and then 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2. That's 8, and you're subtracting 8 from that. So that's going to be equal to, you can cancel out the 5. You have 12 minus 8. That's equal to 4. That's going to be answer choice A. And with that, we conclude test 2 of general math.